I hope you have listened to episode 1 and 2, and welcome to EP3. So today we're jumping into something that I think is...
Oh, it's a big one.
Yeah, it's huge. Because I want you to imagine, like, spending $50 million on a new central nervous system for your company.
Just a casual $50 million.
Right. Just pocket change, And then on launch day, you find out that literally nobody knows how to use it.
Yeah.
And your entire supply chain is just paralyzed.
It happens so much more often than people think.
It's crazy. So today we are looking at why enterprise software migrations almost always fail and how to actually prevent that disaster from happening.
Right.
We're pulling this from Article 3 of the Bletchley Transformation Academy's Executive Briefing Series. And this one covers the BTI Enterprise Architecture for software migration. So we're dissecting this core tension here.
Which is, well, it's essentially that transitioning a massive legacy system to the cloud, it's treated by most organizations as just this linear IT deployment.
Right.
Like, software goes in, switch gets flipped, job done.
Which is obviously the fundamental trap that just kills these initiatives.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking about replacing an ERP.
An enterprise resource planning system.
Right. Or integrating a global CRM, like your customer relationship management platform. These are high capital and exceptionally high risk moves.
Yeah.
And if leadership governs that kind of migration purely through a technical-centric lens, they inevitably trigger just this cascade of failures.
Oh, for sure.
You typically see like rapid scope creep, massive budget overruns, and just severe post-launch operational friction.
Because when a company only measures success by whether the code was deployed on, a specific Tuesday,
right,
they completely ignore the reality of how the business actually operates on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly. It's totally disconnected.
And reading through this, it struck me that a technical-centric migration is it's like building a multi-million-dollar smart home.
Oh, I love this analogy.
And handing over the keys the second the wiring is finished.
Yeah.
And you just simply don't care if the family actually knows how to turn on the lights.
Or if the light switches are even, installed in the right rooms.
Exactly. The house technically has power.
Yeah.
The contractor checks the box, but the family is literally sitting in the dark.
The structure is entirely uninhabitable at that point. And that visual perfectly captures the golden rule that's laid out early in the BTI framework.
Okay.
Which is that success is not measured by go-live cutover speed.
Right.
The true metrics of success are operational stability, user adoption velocity, and sustained business value realization.
Meaning, does the system actually run without crashing?
Right.
Do the employees know how to navigate it without panicking?
Yeah.
And is it generating the efficiency or the revenue it was supposed to generate?
Those are the only 3 questions that actually matter.
Wow.
And if the answer to any of them is no, then the migration is a failure, regardless of what the IT project timeline says.
Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. So if treating this like a linear IT checklist is just a recipe for an expensive disaster,
Yeah, it is.
how do we actually structure a migration?
Well, that's where the source material pivots, right? From the problem to the solution. By outlining a 4-phase migration lifecycle,
Right.
it basically takes this giant, terrifying digital transformation and breaks it down, starting with phase 1.
Which is pre-planning and strategic traceability.
Exactly.
And this involves the C-suite stakeholders and the PMO leads.
A project management office, yeah.
Right. Setting baseline business goals and scoping out operational requirements.
And the critical mechanism in this first phase is that concept of strategic traceability.
Okay.
The text emphasizes building a traceability matrix,
Right.
which in practical terms, think of it as a strict, non-negotiable contract between the business and the technology side.
So every single technical requirement or custom feature the business wants to build has to trace directly back to a baseline business goal.
That's it. Exactly.
So I want to visualize this matrix. It sounds like a giant spreadsheet
Pretty much, yeah.
where column A is a strategic business metric. Reducing customer onboarding time by 15%.
Great example.
And then column B is the specific software feature requested.
Right.
So if a proposed feature in column B doesn't have a clear mathematical link to a goal in column A,
It simply doesn't get built.
wow, it just gets cut.
That is the exact mechanism. This forces executive leadership to really define what success looks like in operational terms before a single line of code is configured.
Oh, that's so smart.
Yeah, it strips away all those vanity features.
Which brings us to the first major checkpoint. Because the framework doesn't just let phases blade into one another.
No, definitely not.
It enforces mandatory governance gates. And gate 1 is the pre-build gate.
Yeah, the gates provide the structural integrity of the entire BTI methodology.
Okay.
Without them, project phases just kind of blur together under the pressure of tight budgets and impatient executives.
Right, everybody just wants it done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So gate 1 sits right between phase 1 and phase 2. And the rule here states that signed-off business process maps and that validated strategic traceability matrix we just discussed must be formally approved by executive sponsors before vendor configuration even begins.
Wow. So no vendor touches the system until the executives sign off on the exact map of what is being built.
And more importantly, why it's being built.
Right. Okay. And I see how this connects to the first pervasive trap the source warns about, which is scope creep.
Oh, yeah. The silent project killer.
Seriously, if we don't have gate 1, we end up in a scenario that feels a lot like building a lifeboat.
A lifeboat. Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah. So you start with a clear goal of surviving a sinking ship. Right. But halfway through construction, stakeholders keep asking you to add, like, a cappuccino machine.
Naturally.
Then a grand piano.
Of course.
Then a velvet lounge. And eventually, the very things you added to make the lifeboat better are the exact things that cause it to stink under its own weight.
That is so accurate. That compounding danger is exactly what destroys IT budgets.
Because it's never just one big thing.
No, scope creep happens through thousands of tiny, uncontrolled modifications.
Wouldn't it be nice if requests?
Yes. By enforcing gate 1, the PMO has an objective shield. So when a department head asks for the metaphorical cappuccino machine, the PMO can literally point to the traceability matrix and say, this does not trace back to our agreed-upon KPIs, so it is halted.
I love that. It takes the emotion out of it.
Completely.
So we've locked the scope. We've refused to add unnecessary weight to the lifeboat. How do we actually start building the seats?
Right.
That brings us to phase 2. Which is architecture, process mapping, and stress testing. And this is the transition from those abstract goals to concrete processes.
Yes.
The text notes that technical integrators and departmental practitioners design the target operating models here. But wait, here is where I want to actually challenge the methodology a bit.
Great, let's hear it.
The text explicitly demands that departmental practitioners physically stress test process maps prior to system build sign-off.
Yeah.
Shouldn't the IT integrators or the software vendor be doing the heavy lifting there?
You would think so, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones being paid millions to supply the software. Why put the burden of process mapping and testing on the internal finance or supply chain teams?
So you are hitting on the core vulnerability of modern software deployments right there.
Really?
Yeah. Making internal practitioners do this work is how the framework avoids the second massive trap, which is vendor reliance.
Okay, explain that.
Well, consider the underlying incentives. If you allow a software vendor or a third-party integrator to design the process map and then allow them to test their own map, they are literally grading their own homework.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They will naturally design a workflow that is easy for their software to execute.
Which is rarely what is efficient for your specific business.
But exactly.
So they will build a system that makes their product look good rather than a system that makes our employees' jobs easier.
Inevitably. That's just how it works.
That's crazy.
So by forcing internal practitioners, the actual people who process the invoices or route the inventory, to take ownership of process mapping early in phase 2, the company eliminates long-term dependency on third-party integrators.
The business dictates how the software must support the work.
Not the other way around.
Wow. Okay, I imagine gate 2 is where the theoretical rubber really meets the road then.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if I'm an internal practitioner at this stage, I am actively trying to break the vendor's promises.
Yes, you are stress testing it to its limits.
And this is the pre-UAT gate, where UAT stands for user acceptance testing.
Right. Gate 2 mandates that the target operating models and test scripts must be stress tested by those internal practitioners.
Okay.
And the governance rule strictly forbids relying exclusively on vendor demonstration scripts.
Because a vendor's demonstration script is always going to be the happy path.
Exactly.
It's a sanitized fantasy.
The vendor's demo script will show you a perfectly clean transaction. The customer inputs all the right data.
The network never lags.
The inventory is perfectly stocked. The payment clears instantly.
But real business is chaotic.
It's so messy. Real business is like A customer tries to pay with a split payment across 2 different currencies while returning an item they bought 3 years ago.
Right. And the system just completely melts down.
Exactly. So the internal practitioners run these tabletop exercises, and they use sandbox environments to throw these messy, real-world curveballs at the process models. They have to prove the model holds up to operational reality before they are even allowed to move into actual software testing.
Wow. Okay, so we've bulletproofed the software against vendor bias.
Yep.
But a perfect system is completely useless if the humans panic on day one.
Oh, yeah.
How does the BTI framework bridge that massive gap between technical perfection and human reality?
It's a big gap.
Because, I mean, we have all lived through a software launch where the system goes live and suddenly no one in the building knows how to do their job.
We've all been there. And bridging that gap is the exact purpose of Phase 3.
Okay. Cutover execution and triage readiness.
Right. This is where technical deployment runs concurrently with workforce enablement.
Meaning moving the data is only half the battle.
Exactly. The other half is preparing the people.
Okay.
The source breaks Phase 3 into final data migration, user acceptance testing, role-based associate enablement, and deploying floor-level support triaging teams.
Let's unpack the human element there. Role-based enablement means we aren't just, putting 500 employees in a room and giving them a generic 3-hour PowerPoint on the new system.
No, not at all.
We are training the warehouse worker solely on the specific scanner sequence they need to load a truck.
Yes, providing targeted, relevant knowledge.
That makes so much more sense.
And then the floor-level triage teams act as your rapid response units.
Okay.
These aren't just help desk numbers you call when you get an error code and wait on hold for an hour.
Right.
These are super users physically present on the operational floor, often wearing bright vests or lanyards so you can spot them.
Well, that's smart.
So when an employee hesitates or hits a wall on launch day, a triage member is there in seconds to unblock them.
Ensuring the operational queue doesn't back up and cause a broader systemic failure.
Exactly.
Which sets up Gate 3, the pre-cutover gate.
The big one.
This is the final checkpoint before leadership is allowed to flip the switch. And the metric here is incredibly aggressive.
It really is.
Frontline associate training completion rates must exceed 90% per operational role.
Yep.
And the internal support triage network must be fully operational. 90% completion per role seems bordering on impossible in most corporate environments where people are already overworked just doing their day job.
Well, the strictness is the point.
Really?
Gate 3 is designed to prevent cutover blindness.
Cutover blindness.
Yeah. This happens when leadership looks at an IT dashboard and they see that all the technical lights are green.
Okay.
The servers are provisioned, the data is migrated, the API endpoints are communicated.
Everything looks great on paper.
Right. And they authorize the launch, completely blind to the fact that the human workforce is not prepared at all.
I can picture the catastrophic failure that happens when cutover blindness sets in.
That's bad.
Imagine a major retailer rolling out a new inventory management system just before the holidays.
The worst time.
The IT team celebrates because the code deployed flawlessly. But down on the loading dock, the workers were only like 50% trained on the new handheld UI.
Right.
The trucks arrive, the workers don't know how to scan the pallets in, the receiving dock freezes, the trucks literally back up into the street.
Yeah.
And within 24 hours, the entire regional supply chain is paralyzed. The software worked perfectly, but the business just completely stopped.
That exact scenario plays out constantly across global industries.
Wow.
And that's why Gate 3 requires operational readiness to carry the exact same weight as technical sign-off.
It stops rushed go-live decisions dead in their tracks.
If your logistics team is only at 60% training completion, you delay the launch. Period.
Even if the IT team says we're ready.
Exactly. The 90% threshold per role forces the business to prioritize, fund, and protect human enablement, rather than just treating it as an afterthought.
It forces the IT timeline to submit to the human timeline.
Yes.
I love that. So let's say we hit the 90%, the triage teams are walking the floor in their bright vests, and we successfully go live.
Okay.
We pass Gate 3. The system is running.
Yeah.
In a traditional company, this is where the project team throws a launch party, everyone high-fives, and they disband to work on the next thing.
Which leads directly to the failure of the entire investment.
Wow.
Yeah, the BTI framework immediately transitions into Phase 4, which is post-launch stabilization and value realization.
Okay.
Going live is simply the beginning of the operational phase.
That's a huge mindset shift.
It is. Leadership must now track those exact operational KPIs established back in phase 1.
Right, the traceability matrix.
Yes. They have to actively hunt down residual friction points and mathematically validate that the projected return on investment is actually materializing.
I've actually seen this happen firsthand. A company spends a fortune on a massive unified data platform. They launch it, the IT team disbands, and 2 months later, you walk through the finance department and realize they are just exporting all the data out of the new multi-million-dollar platform.
Oh, no.
And doing all their actual work in Excel spreadsheets.
Yep.
Because the new user interface is too clunky.
You are describing the fourth and final trap, benefits leakage.
Benefits leakage, okay.
It is the slow, quiet bleeding of value.
Yeah.
It happens when a new system is deployed, but employees find workarounds like your Excel example.
Because it's just easier for them.
Right. Or they simply refuse to use the advanced analytical features or the new workflows, inadvertently slow down processing times.
Wow.
The expected benefits, the efficiency gains, the headcount reductions, the revenue bumps, they just leak away into the margins.
There's money dripping out of the bottom of the company because no one stuck around to patch the holes.
Exactly.
How does the framework physically prevent that from happening?
Through Gate 4, the value realization gate.
Okay.
This final checkpoint mandates that post-launch operational performance metrics must mathematically match or exceed the baseline pre-migration targets.
Before the project is officially closed.
Exactly, before it transitions to business as usual or BAU.
So the project team isn't allowed to close the books, claim victory, or reallocate their budget until the new system is performing at least as well as the legacy system it replaced.
It holds leadership's feet to the fire.
Yeah, it really does.
Gate 4 ensures executive focus remains locked onto operational capability until the ROI is actually achieved.
So a migration isn't deemed a success when the software is turned on?
No. It is deemed a success when the financial and operational numbers actually prove it.
Wow. When we pull all of these phases and gates together, the overarching theme of this BTA framework becomes incredibly clear. An enterprise software migration is an operational capability transformation.
Yes.
This is not merely a software deployment project. The software is just the tool. The actual transformation is the evolution of how the business operates on a Tuesday afternoon.
That's the perfect way to phrase it. Governing a digital transformation through this 4-phase life cycle establishes clear accountability at every level.
Yeah.
It replaces subjective optimism with objective governance gates.
Which we desperately need.
Right. Actively mitigating deployment risks and ultimately ensuring the company actually gets what it paid for.
It really makes you rethink the mechanics behind every mandatory software update you've ever had to sit through at work.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, for a quick housekeeping detail before we wrap up today's analysis.
Okay.
If you are a PMO lead or a change director listening to this to stay current on industry frameworks, the source playfully reminds us that you can claim your official CPD certificate for this material.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's valid from August 2026 to August 2029, and you can secure those credits by just scanning the QR code in Article 3.
Taking the time to absorb these methodologies is an investment in your own operational readiness, really.
Absolutely. So as we close out today's deep dive into the BTI Enterprise Architecture, it's clear this entire document isn't just about avoiding IT headaches or saving budget.
No.
It's about fundamentally respecting the human mechanics of how a business actually operates.
Exactly. And if I can leave the listener with one final thought to ponder based on the philosophy embedded in these pages.
I'll do.
If an organization treats a massive digital transformation purely as a linear IT checklist, are they fundamentally misunderstanding the nature of their own business?
Wow.
Because a company isn't the code it runs on, it's the people and the processes.
Right.
If leadership forces a system live without that 90% training gate, essentially treating their employees as collateral damage just to meet a technical deadline, what hidden irreversible damage are they doing to their company culture and employee trust long after the IT team has popped the champagne for a successful launch?